welcome back to Ultimate S&S. So today we're going to be discussing some of our garden plants that we have out here, guys. So as you can see up here, we have a purple top turnip. You can see it's starting to kind of develop here. Typically you're going to see a knot form on the root, and that's going to continue to enlarge inside the ground here. If you have your turnips that are planted too close together, you'll get a lot of greens, but you're not going to get a lot of bulbs. So you're going to need to make sure that those are spaced out at least 6 inches apart between your plants. And the best way to do that, honestly, is to just plant a lot of seeds and then come in and thin them out as they get larger. And you can move the ones that are too close together and you can plant them in another row, or you can just allow it all to grow and just have a large plot of turnip greens. If you look over here, I've planted turnip greens very close together. We're not going to get a lot of turnip bulbs out of this, but we are going to get a lot of greens, and you can come in and start harvesting those greens. The older you let them get, the larger you let them get, the more bite they're going to have when you come to eat them. They're going to have a little bit spicy flavor to them, so don't let them get too large in the summertime. Otherwise they're going to be very hot, very spicy. So I came out and I did a lot of thinning around the tomato plants. There were a couple shoots coming up from other seeds. I usually plant about 3 seeds per hole. So you want to trim that down to just 1 plant, guys. We had some pretty strong winds, so everything's slightly bent. The sun is going to correct that as well. If you have anything that's laying on the ground, you can easily come in, just kind of push on the opposite side of the root and it'll pull it up. Tomato plants, maybe not so much you have to worry about, but like corn and things like that, just the opposite direction of its leaning, push down on the ground, it usually will tighten the root ball back up just from the ground being saturated with water. But as you can see, I mean, we don't have any aphids. You're going to have this kind of fuzzy material down here. That's just part of the plant. But you want to check around your nodes, and it's going to look like little spider webs if you have aphids. I've walked down through here and I've not seen anything on our tomato plants at all. So over here we have our Georgia collard greens. I've never actually grown collard greens before, so we're going to see how this turns out. My understanding is you want to plant them kind of close, 1 or 2 inches apart, and just sow them in, and then you just trim the leaves. So we're going to see how this works, but they seem to be growing well. I come in and I put a little bit of quail fertilizer out, a compost tea, put that out before the rain yesterday, and that just really just kind of helps to further dilute the solution, but it also leaves nutrients in the ground as it washes in from the rain. And that's how I would advise you to fertilize your gardens, is before you put your stuff out, you want to make sure that you got a good rain coming in. That's just really going to help to get those nutrients in the ground. It's going to save you on having to water your plants as well. And of course we have all of our corn growing up through here. I came in and straightened up some of the stalks that were leaning from the storm last night. Like I say, you just push over on the side against where it's leaning, and it's going to pick your cobs back up or your plants back up. Of course, one of my favorite plants is the squash plant. When it comes to gardening, I love tomatoes, but when it comes down to it, I mean, you can't beat squash and zucchini. I mean, they're great with just about anything, and I absolutely love growing them because they will continue to produce until your first frost if you take care of your plants and harvest them right. So you can actually get a lot of food from 1 plant. Now, if you have, like I have, multiple plants against a trellis, that's really going to up the odds of how much you're producing. And then adding the correct nutrients and things like that to that plant is going to keep it blooming until you start getting your first frost, guys. And of course we have our green bean sprouts. They're growing very well out here. We're up to about the 3rd node, so these are going to be ready to start receiving fertilizer. So the plan is to make up some more compost. I'm going to start fertilizing this whole back side of the garden and trying to get this stuff up to par. I did put a little bit out for the corn and some out for the lettuce yesterday. So it's just a work in progress, guys. It takes a while, but you can settle for what you're going to get normally, or you can start trying to find natural ways to make compost teas to really add nutrients to your plants and get those to really take off and start to flourish. And of course we have our lettuce. So the way this lettuce grows is it's going to grow leaves from the center that will spread out. So anytime you go to trim these later, you don't want to pull the whole plant. You want to come in and trim the outer leaves. If you're making your salads, trim around the outer leaves and always leave the cluster in the center. That way that will continue to produce. Now if you start to see that they're getting too large, then yes, you can come in and harvest one about every other lettuce head. But if you space those out, kind of how we have it here, we got about between 6 to 8 inches on each side of this. That's going to give us a fairly large lettuce head, and continually harvesting that, it's really going to last a very long time. And we actually have about, I want to say about 2 full rows of lettuce, which may be too much, but there are 5 people at this household, so we're going to be able to make sure everybody's getting the salads they want. And what they don't eat or what goes bad out here, guys, that will always go out to the chickens. That way they are being fed. That is part of having a sustainable lifestyle, is even if you yourself are not going to be able to eat it, your flock animals are, and they in turn are going to give you more fertilizer. They're going to give you more food later, whether it be in eggs or meat as well. So you have to understand, when you're doing a sustainable program, the importance of what that is. When you're working on sustainability, guys, you really have to make sure that you're keeping your meat animals healthy. You want to make sure that you're keeping them plenty of food. As you can see, we've got a few in here that are still in molt, but most everybody has their new feathers in. But giving them garden scraps, such as the greens and things like that, that really helps to bolster the production when they have eggs and stuff. And understand, when you're giving them shell, whether it be eggshells or oyster shells, that poo that they create, it's going to have a good source of calcium in it, which then transfers to the plants, which then transfers right back to the birds as you feed them. I'm hoping that kind of explains a little bit about not just what we're doing in the garden, guys, but how that garden ties into sustainability with other programs that I'm running out here. Yes, gardens will put food on your table. They will put food back in your pantry as well. But what's most important is, if you're taking proper care of your flock animals, like your quail or your chickens, or whatever it is that you're using for your manure composts, you're going to ensure that if you're taking proper care of your animals, your plants are going to have everything that they need when you feed those plants back to the animals. And it just works full circle. So always make sure that you're giving your animals what they need. Don't just feed them a cheap source of food. You can go get the cheapest feed if you want to, but make sure that you're amending that with things that are high in vitamins, high in minerals, and things like that as well. And what that's going to do is that's going to help keep your entire sustainability program on track. Because if you have a bunch of sickly chickens, you don't want to be putting sick birds manure on your garden, because it could be transferring diseases and stuff to you. So that's just something that you want to keep an eye on. I have someone over here crowing. I'm not sure who it is. And always make sure that you kind of take and just, spoil your birds a little bit. I know cracked corn doesn't have a lot of nutrition to it, but what you can do is you can add some sunflower seed to that, and that's going to help bolster up the amino acids and things that it carries. But it's also going to keep your flocks happy. So as you can see, this big buff Orpington, for those who don't know much about chickens, that's this guy right here. That is the one that is out here crowing like crazy. And unfortunately, he's quite a bit bigger than most of the chickens out here, and he's not the rooster that I was hoping to keep. So the rooster we're going to keep is going to be Bart in the back. He's the one with a real tall comb. So unfortunately, this guy here And then Frank, which has the pea comb, they will be getting processed for the pot or for the freezer, unfortunately. But that is part of having sustainability. Keep your flocks healthy. You don't want too many roosters in your flock because they can actually damage your hens and create a situation where your hens no longer are able to lay. And you don't want that. And of course, one of the most important things you could have for any homestead, guys, is bees. Honeybees, pollinators. They're going to keep your plants healthy. They're going to be able to keep your plants producing, but you also get that sweet honey. So I know that there's a lot of people that like to keep their snacks and things, and hey, I've got certain snack foods I like as well. But one of the things I really enjoy is fresh honey, and that's going to be healthier than any snack you can package. It's going to help with allergies and things like that as well later in the future. So I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. We are going to be working on the playlist here pretty soon, adding more content. But right now we have a lot of the basic information. If you're wanting to get into chickens or quail or honeybees and things like that, just go to those playlists and check them out. If you don't know how to get to our playlist, when you are at the channel homepage on YouTube, it should have a category across the top, and it'll show recent uploads, things like that. It'll have a tab that says playlist, and that's going to be broken down. You'll see a few playlists, but if you hit that little arrow that points down, it's going to open that screen up, show you all of our playlists that we have. And also there's a community tab on there, and that's where we can discuss. I usually will drop pieces of news and things like that. That's important to know, but maybe I just don't see making a video on it. I don't want this channel to be something where it feels like it's fear mongering, because we're aware of the issues, and I will bring issues up, but I want to show you the solutions to those issues rather than just sit there and talk about how bad it's going to be. Let's meet it head on, and let's figure out how we're going to survive when the world is basically turning against anyone who is looking for this type of lifestyle, who does not want to leave the government to eat. So everyone have a wonderful day.